Well, welcome back to our study of the Book of Ruth. Today we're going to be looking at the third and fourth chapters of Ruth, having looked at the first two chapters last time. Here's a question. Do you ever wonder if God is at work in your life? I mean, you think about all the decisions that have been made and things may be going in a direction other than what you would choose, and the circumstances of life not being all that good. And you're thinking, does God even care? Is God even at work? Well, that's one of the reasons why the book of Ruth is such a good book to read. Because Ruth, this book affirms that indeed God does care and God is at work. He was at work in Ruth's life, and he is at work in your life and my life too. And we're going to be affirmed of this as we read this book. Now, what we were looking at last time is the beginning of Ruth, where we find that this woman, Naomi, with her husband, go down from Bethlehem, which is in Judah, a Jewish area, into Moab, which is a Gentile area, in time of famine. And they go down with their two sons. And it doesn't turn out well for Naomi because, in fact, her husband and her two sons die. And so she's left with her two daughters-in-laws. And now the famine is over 10 years later, and she's returning to Bethlehem, back to where she was before. On the way back with her two daughters-in-laws, she says to them, you know, you're still young. You need a husband. Go back to Moab. That's your home territory. You're more likely to find a husband there. And her one daughter-in-law, Orpah, says, okay, and kisses her mother-in-law, Naomi, and goes back. And then Ruth, she says, go back, Ruth. Go back with your daughter, your sister-in-law. And Ruth makes this statement. She says, no. She says, I'm going with you. And where you go, I'm going. Your people, Jewish nation, are going to be my people. And your God is going to be my God. So Naomi doesn't try to convince her anymore. And in fact, Ruth goes back with Naomi to Bethlehem. Here they are, two widows. How are they going to provide for their welfare? Well, the only way that seems open to them at the time, and that is by gleaning. And so Ruth goes out to the fields so that she can pick up the grain that the harvesters have left over after they've gone out and threshed the grain in the fields. And it tells us that as Ruth does that, she ends up in the field of Boaz. By chance? Well, this godly man treats Ruth so well when he finds out who she is, and he protects her, says, don't go here, stay with me. He provides food for her. He even tells the harvesters to drop grain so that Ruth can pick it up more easily. Ruth goes home and tells her mother-in-law what has happened, and her mother-in-law is just delighted that Ruth is gleaning in Boaz's field. She says, stay there. And so she does for 4 months, gleaning during the barley harvest and also during the wheat harvest. And now we come to chapter 3. It says, one day Naomi, Ruth's mother-in-law, said to her, Ruth, my daughter, should I not try to find a home for you where you will be well provided for? Is not Boaz, with whose servant girls you have been, a kinsman of ours? Tonight he will be winnowing barley on the threshing floor. Wash and perfume yourself and put on your best clothes, then go down to the threshing floor, but don't let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. When he lies down, note the place where he is lying, Then go and uncover his feet and lie down. He will tell you what to do." "I will do whatever you say," Ruth answered. So Naomi has a plan, a scheme, a plan. And the plan involves Boaz. Boaz is a kinsman. In fact, last time it said he was a kinsman redeemer. That means that he's a person who is powerful and in a position of authority in his clan, of which Naomi is a part, to look after the people who are more vulnerable, like widows, to do such things as buy them back if they've been sold into slavery because of debt, or to redeem their property if they've had to sell it to keep it within the family, and most especially to provide for an heir for a deceased member of the family by marrying the widow. So, Naomi's plan: Ruth, tonight, Boaz is going to go down to the threshing floor, and then he's going to lie down to sleep. I want you to go down there. Put on your perfume. Look your best. And when you do go down there, once he's asleep, then uncover his feet. And once you do, well, what's going to happen, obviously, is Boaz is going to wake up with cold feet, and then Ruth, do whatever Boaz tells you to do. It's in Boaz's court. It goes on to say, verse 6, "So Ruth went down to the threshing floor and did everything her mother-in-law told her to do. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking and was in good spirits, he went over to lie down at the far end of the grain pile. Ruth approached quietly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. In the middle of the night, something startled the man, and he turned and discovered a woman lying at his feet. 'Who are you?' he asked. 'I am your servant Ruth,' she said. 'Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a kinsman redeemer.' 'The Lord bless you, my daughter,' he replied. 'This kindness is greater than that which you showed earlier. You have not run after the younger men, whether rich or poor. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I will do for you all you ask. All my fellow townsmen know that you are a woman of noble character. Although it is true that I am near of kin, there is a kinsman redeemer nearer than I. Stay here for the night, and in the morning, if he wants to redeem, good. Let him redeem. But if he is not willing, as surely as the Lord lives, I will do it. Lie here until morning.'" So this was a culturally acceptable way to suggest that you were interested in marriage. "Spread your corner of your garment over me, since you are a kinsman redeemer." So Naomi knew what Ruth was suggesting. I can't help but mention how I went to Florida a few years back. I was in a place called The Villages with my roommate from university. This is 50 years later. And he was telling me in this place, there are a lot of seniors, there are a lot of widows, widowers. And he was telling me that what happened in that setting in which he lived is if a woman was interested in a man and wanted to suggest marriage to him there in the Villages in Florida, what she would do is she would bring him a casserole. And when the casserole was brought, then the man would understand that the woman was suggesting marriage. Well, Boaz understood clearly what Ruth was suggesting. But Boaz didn't act impetuously, nor like an old fool. Rather, he's a godly man, and he's willing to take this responsibility of being a kinsman redeemer. He probably was attracted to Ruth, but he wasn't going to shortcut things and do things against God's will. he knew that there was a kinsman redeemer that was closer to Naomi than was himself. So he's going to put it to this man first to see if he wants to marry Ruth. Verse 14. So Ruth lay at his feet until morning, but got up before anyone could be recognized, and he said, "Don't let it be known that a woman came to the threshing floor." We don't want people gossiping. Boaz also said, "Bring me the shawl you are wearing and hold it out." When she did so, he poured into it 6 measures of barley and put it on her. Then he went back to town. When Ruth came to her mother-in-law, Naomi asked, "How did it go, my daughter?" Then she told her everything Boaz had done for her and added, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley, saying, 'Don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed.'" Then Naomi said, "Wait, my daughter, until you find out what happens, for the man will not rest until the matter is settled today." Naomi knew that her plan was coming to fruition. She knew that Boaz was interested. No question about it. Chapter 4. Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate. That's the place where business was done in the little towns, a center of activity. And some business is going to happen right now. Boaz is going to make it happen. When the kinsman redeemer he had mentioned came along, Boaz said, "Come over here, my friend, and sit down." So he went over and sat down. So now the kinsman redeemer that's closer to Naomi than himself, than Boaz is sitting down. And Boaz is going to put it to him. Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, they're going to be witnesses, "Sit here." And they did so. Then he said to the kinsman redeemer, "Here's the proposition. Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our brother Elimelech." Oh. This man probably his ears picked up. Land? "I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me, so I will know. For no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line." Okay, here's this land. You want to buy it back? Act as a kinsman redeemer? Bring it back into the family? And if you don't do it, then I'll do it. Well, this sounded pretty good to the man he was speaking to. "I will redeem it," he said. Then Boaz said, "On the day you buy the land from Naomi and from Ruth the Moabitess, you acquire the dead man's widow in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property." Okay, you get the land, but you're also going to get Naomi and Ruth, and you need to marry her to fulfill your responsibility as a kinsman redeemer. Are you willing to do that? Not just buy the land back, but also marry Ruth? At this, the kinsman redeemer said, "Then I cannot redeem it, because I might endanger my own estate." This man probably had children. If he marries Ruth and they have children, then their children might be in competition with his own children with respect to the estate later on. Puts his estate in jeopardy as far as how it's going to pass on. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it. Okay, Boaz, you put it to me. I had the chance, but after I thought about it, I don't want it. You do it. Now, in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off a sandal and gave it to the other. This was the method of legalizing transactions in Israel. So the kinsman redeemer said to Boaz, "Buy it yourself," and he removed his sandal. They've got these traditions, the way they transact business. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, "Today you are witnesses that I have bought from Naomi all the property of Elimelech, Kilion, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabitess, Mahlon's widow, as my wife in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from his family or from the town records. Today you are witnesses." It's all legal. I'm taking the property and the wife. I'm buying both back. I'm acting as kinsman redeemer. And you people are witnesses. Then the elders and all those at the gate said, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel." Rachel and Leah were responsible for so many of the sons who became the heads of the 12 tribes of Israel. "May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem," which is where they were. "Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah." And of course, Perez was from Tamar. Tamar, like Ruth, was not an Israelite. She was from a Gentile area as well. So that's the reference. Well, this is the way it ends. There's been challenges along the way for Naomi and Ruth, but it all ends really well. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. Then he went to her, and the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The women said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a kinsman redeemer. Naomi, the Lord has blessed you. May he become famous throughout Israel, this child that's just born. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age, for your daughter-in-law, Ruth, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth." And Ruth certainly was better to Naomi than 7 sons. Then Naomi took the child, laid him in her lap, and cared for him. The women living there said, "Naomi has a son." Naomi was really her grandson, but we're not talking about that. And she sees them in that way as being her heir. And Naomi's chest probably burst, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Then this is the family line of Perez. Perez was the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, Boaz the father of Obed, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David. This child, Obed, wasn't just any child. He was the grandfather of David, King David. And that makes Naomi the great-grandfather, great-great-grandmother. Well, what a happy note this book ends on. Let's see if we can have a couple of takeaways from it. Here's one. The book of Ruth clearly illustrates that God is at work accomplishing his purposes at both the national level and the personal for the blessing of all those who are faithful. So, God is at work. He's at work in the national level, but he's also at work in the personal level. On the national level, all kinds of things are happening here. There's a famine in the land, so that's a natural event. There are chance events like Ruth gleaning in Boaz's field rather than somebody else's field. There are human schemes and plans and plots, such as Naomi's plan to get a husband for Ruth. There are legal processes, this idea of the kinsman redeemer in the nation of Israel. There are reproductive matters here, talking about Naomi and Ruth and Boaz having a child together. So there are all these different factors, decisions being made, natural events happening, laws, and all of these kinds of things. And God is working through all of these things to bring about his purposes. And that purpose that we see is to establish the line of David. That's where it ends, with David. But David ultimately his line goes down to our Lord Jesus Christ. So establishing the line of Jesus Christ. So God is at work in all of these things that we see happening here at the great level, at the high level of doing this very important thing of establishing the line of David and ultimately Jesus Christ. But he is also at work in the personal level, blessing Boaz, this godly man, Ruth, this wonderful woman who is faithful to her mother-in-law and faithful to this God that she has said that she would take on, the God of Israel. And even Naomi, who at times seems to be complaining, but always acknowledges God, that God is there and that God is at work. She always is attributing what's happening to God. And in fact, God is working in all of these situations, which sometimes don't seem to be good. A famine, to be destitute, a widow and have to find a place to find food, without males. In all of these difficulties, God is still at work to bring blessing to these individual people. Boaz with a godly wife, Ruth with a godly husband and supportive husband, and Naomi to protect her and to be within the line of King David. And the other takeaway that we have from this is that even though God is at work and God can always accomplish his purposes, no matter what is happening, nothing thwarts the purposes of God. That doesn't mean that people should live carelessly. We should live like Boaz and Ruth lived during this time, as godly people, as best that we are able, God being our helper. We should seek to do what God wants us to do and to make godly decisions, even in the smallest of the activities that we have in life, so that God will be his purpose will be accomplished anyway, but that God could be blessed through this, and actually will be blessed too, because our actions always have consequences. And even if we make good decisions in small things, then we can expect to have better consequences as a result of that. Well, thank you for being with me through the study of the Book of Ruth. I hope you've been blessed by it as I have been. God be with you.